The Pandavas have endured 13 years of exile. To avert global war, they demand their rightful half of the empire, or merely 5 villages. But the blind king Dhritarashtra is stalling. His emissary, Sanjaya, has just delivered a scathing public rebuke to the king, yet refuses to reveal the Pandavas' exact terms until the sun comes up. Trapped in the agonizing wait, Dhritarashtra is unable to sleep. His insomnia is a physical manifestation of his own guilt, a somatic symptom of his complicity in the unrighteous theft of his nephew's inheritance. Desperate for psychological relief in the dead of night, the king summons his chief minister and half-brother, Vidura. Vidura occupies a unique position in the Hastinapur court. Born to a maidservant, strict caste conventions permanently bar him from the throne, even though he is revered as the human incarnation of Yama, the deity of cosmic justice. This lower social status provides a massive strategic advantage. Without a royal title to protect, Vidura has absolutely nothing to gain from flattery and nothing to lose by speaking the truth. When he arrives, he doesn't offer the king hollow platitudes or comforting reassurances. He diagnoses the king's moral paralysis and delivers a relentless lecture on ethical governance. This midnight conversation, forged on the precipice of war, survives today as the Vidura Nīti, a blueprint for leadership when institutions are on the brink of collapse. Vidura begins by redefining what it means to be a wise leader. True wisdom, he argues, isn't measured by raw intellect or academic erudition. It is a state of consciousness that remains completely undisturbed by panic, profit, or pain. To make this clear, he holds up a psychological mirror, contrasting this grounded leader with what he calls the Murkha, the fool. Looking at this translated text, we see Vidura's diagnostic criteria for the fool. He identifies traits like vanity, excessive talking, and someone who is ignorant of scripture yet vain. As the text concludes, the fool resorts to unfair means for the acquisition of personal objectives. By explicitly listing these traits, Vidura traps the king. Dhritarashtra is forced to recognize that his own son, Duryodhana, perfectly embodies the exact psychological profile of the fool. Vidura introduces the chariot metaphor. The body is the chariot, the soul the driver, the mind acts as reins, and the 5 senses are horses. If the driver becomes distracted, the reins snap. The wild senses violently pull the chariot apart, ensuring destruction. The political application of this is absolute. A ruler who cannot conquer his own internal anger, lust, and ego is structurally incapable of governing an empire. With the psychological baseline established, Vidura shifts the focus to macroeconomics and the sustainable extraction of state resources. He compares a competent administrator to a honeybee. A king should extract taxes and wealth from his subjects without causing distress, just as a bee gathers nectar without damaging the flower's petals. He contrasts the bee with the charcoal maker. A greedy, exploitative leader burns the entire forest down to its roots for a short-term payout, leaving nothing behind to sustain the state. This exploitation is often enabled by the architecture of trust. Vidura warns that a leader's greatest vulnerability is surrounding themselves with sycophants, flatterers who provide the comfort of confirmation bias while completely obscuring the reality of a crisis. Dhritarashtra admits Vidura is logically and ethically right, yet the king claims he is paralyzed, blaming his inaction on the overriding force of destiny and a blinding parental attachment to his corrupt son. Vidura dismantles this fatalism completely and immediately. He states that trying to secure imperial prosperity through unrighteous means is like wrapping wet leather around glowing embers. It will inevitably shrivel, shrink, and incinerate. Systemic institutional failure is rarely an act of destiny or bad luck. It is the direct consequence of leaders consciously choosing personal attachment and ego over their ethical duty to the state. Dawn finally breaks over Hastinapura. The private masterclass ends, and despite hearing the absolute truth, King Dhritarashtra refuses to act on it. The dominoes fall exactly as Vidura predicted. Krishna's peace embassy is rejected, and Duryodhana's arrogant entitlement dictates the state's path forward. Realizing his counsel is useless against such entrenched ego, Vidura commits a final act of integrity. He breaks his bow, resigns his position as prime minister, and walks away from the court. Ignoring his counsel results in devastation. The ensuing Kurukshetra War leads to the near-total annihilation of the Kuru lineage, leaving the kingdom in ashes. This tragedy validates the cosmic formula embedded in the text, Vato Dharmasta Tato Jaya. Where there is dharma, righteousness, there is victory. Without it, there is only ruin. The fall of Hastinapura maps directly onto modern institutional collapse. The mechanisms of ruin are identical to today's corporate greed, systemic corruption, and political echo chambers fueled by sycophants. The Vidura Nīti survives as a living blueprint. It proves that true leadership requires the courage to hear unpleasant truths, master personal desires, and actively choose justice over convenience.